up, Transit? How are we doing? Guys, it's so good to see you. For those of you that I have not had the chance to meet yet, my name is Ashlyn, and I'm super excited that you chose to come to Transit this morning. Are y'all excited about fall break? Yeah, no school. What could be better than that? The few and the mighty are here this morning, but it's awesome because you guys get to be here for the first part of this series. Guys, we are kicking off a new series today called Bless Your Heart, and it's going to be going on for the next 4 weeks. But how many of you have ever heard the phrase, bless your heart? Anyone? Yeah, probably from like your sweet grandma who's like, oh, bless your heart. And when she's talking about your heart, you know she's not talking about like the physical organ, right? Like the thing that is like pumping the blood through your body. No, what she's talking about is the fact that you have, emotions, you have ideas, you have a will. It's like the innermost part of you. It's not the physical organ, but what makes up, honestly, something we call your soul. And so in this series, when we're talking about bless your heart, that is the heart that we're referring to. And I think you've also heard this phrase of something like pulling at your heartstrings. Anyone in here kind of heard of that? And it's when you're really moved deeply to some emotion because of maybe a book that you've read or a movie that you've seen or a story that you've heard. And so, no shame here, but I cry very easily at things, so things pull on my heartstring far too often. However, I recently saw a movie that really caught me off guard, and I was not expecting to cry as much as I did. Now, have any of you seen the movie Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3? Yeah, guys, this movie, it wrecked me. And I knew it was going to wreck me when about 10 minutes in, this guy pops on the screen. Yes, little baby Rocket. He is absolutely amazing, but as soon as this face popped up there, I mean instant tears. And not just like tearing up where you're kind of sniffling, but like tears streaming down my face. And they did not stop for the duration of the movie, which is like 2 to 3 hours long. Caught me so off guard because the other Guardians movies were honestly kind of lighthearted and funny, and then this one just got to me. But it got to me because there's parts of Rocket's story that I either related to, or it taught me something profound, or it's just the fact that you get to know this character on a whole nother level, and so you find yourself actually caring deeply for Rocket. And now, no spoilers here, but I just got to the point where I was like, hey, like this is really pulling at my heartstrings here, but it caught me so off guard. And so my question to y'all today is, can you think of a time, you don't have to answer this out loud, but can you think of a time where you were caught off guard emotionally? Maybe it's a song you listened to, a book that you read, a movie that you watched, and all of a sudden you're crying or you feel yourself like angry or some sort of emotion kind of welling up inside of you. Or maybe I'll take it a step farther and it's not from a story or song that you've heard, but it's actually something that's going on in your own personal life. Like maybe you got a bad grade at school or something was going on at home and it evoked this emotion that you weren't expecting to be there. So my question is, why does this happen? And I want to demonstrate what I think ends up happening to us so often in life. So say you're going to school, you've studied, night and day for this test coming up, you really want to do well on it. And then comes the day in class when you're getting your test back and your teacher hands it to you, and it's not the grade that you wanted. And so in that moment, you start to feel this emotion of insecurity or embarrassment. So it starts to fill up your heart. Or you go into school and you want to hang out with this group of friends, but for whatever reason, things just aren't going well that day. So you kind of feel on the outs. You don't feel a part of it, so you start to feel lonely or sad. Or maybe you play on a particular sports team and you're in that game that afternoon and things also are not going the way that you wanted to. You messed up or your teammate messed up, so you're frustrated at yourself and at them. And so it starts to fill up more. Or you get home from school one day and you are just in this argument with your sibling or with your parent, and you're so annoyed and you can feel that rising up in you as well. And before you know it, you've had all of these experiences that have filled you up with all of these negative emotions. But so often in life, we're too busy to even recognize what's going on. So before we know it, we're full here, and then we have one more interaction where something doesn't go our way, and it starts to fill us up, and then it starts to overflow. And what I think so often happens is that we get caught in the busyness and we don't pause enough, and so we don't actually end up thinking about our emotions until they're spilling over. And when I say spilling over, I mean you're like lashing out at your sibling in anger, or at that person on the field or on the court, or you find yourself uncontrollably crying about something like me in that movie, and you just don't know what happened and you don't know where it came from because you weren't paying attention enough to see what was going on in your own heart and in your own life. And so we get to a point where we're like, well, if this is how life's going to go, like, what do we do with this? Because emotions aren't bad. No, they're actually very natural and they're God-given and something that I think helps us navigate life. And so it's normal that we would feel all of these things, but what's important is what we do next. It's how we respond to these emotions that have built up in our life, how we take care of ourselves so that we don't end up in a place where it's spilling over when we don't want it to. And so this morning, we're going to look at the book of Proverbs. It's in the Old Testament in the Bible. It's written by a guy named Solomon, who is one of the wisest men to ever live. And so this book, you can look at it, is filled with verse after verse after verse of just wise principles and pieces of advice. And so I want you to see what Solomon says about this situation. In Proverbs 4:23, he says, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." Above all else. Guys, like I said, this book is filled with pieces of advice and wisdom. And he's saying, above anything else that you're reading right now, I want you to guard your heart. Once again, it's not the organ that is beating inside of you, but it's deeply who you are at your core. Your emotions, your personality, your will. He's saying, I want you to guard it. And I think of like a security guard that keeps watch over a place at night or during the day. And the whole purpose of this guard is to keep unwanted people or things out of this place. He's carefully watching over it. He's protecting it. And then if something gets inside that's not supposed to be there, it's then the guard's job to take care of it as well, to address the situation, to make sure everything's okay. And so Solomon's like, hey, your heart is so important that above anything else, I want you to guard it. Because Solomon knows that this situation is true. He knows that everything you do flows from your heart. Any interaction that you have with people, decisions that you make, friendships that you start, everything in your life is going to flow from your heart in the state that it currently is. And so if we haven't been careful enough to guard it, and we haven't been careful enough to actually attend to it and make sure that it's okay, it's going to spill over when we don't want it to. And we're going to be a version of ourselves that we don't want to be. And so ultimately, I think Solomon is just saying, hey, you need to pay attention to your heart. Pay attention to your heart. Don't let your life get too busy that you don't take a second to evaluate what is going on and how you're feeling in response to it. Another way that I think you can put this, and actually an action step, is this, that you need to take inventory of your emotions. Now, this may sound like a weird phrase, but you think about inventory at like a store, like at Target. They are constantly keeping track of what is in their back stock, that the way they can put it on their shelves. They know how much they need to order based on how much is being bought. And so the same is true with our heart, that I want you guys to take a minute, whether this week or later this afternoon, and think about, okay, so all of the different experiences that I've had right now, what have I been feeling in regards to them? How has it been filling up my heart? What is the inventory of my emotions right now? And once you've taken a second to pause and reflect on this, I want you to do one of two things. Either I want you to go talk to someone about it, Maybe it's a trusted friend or your small group leader or a parent. Or if you don't have anyone that you feel comfortable talking to, I want you to at least write about it. Because there's something so powerful that happens when you're willing to take all these thoughts and emotions in your head and your heart and actually either put them out on paper or speak them out loud to someone else. What happens in that moment is that you begin to, one, recognize what is going on, and two, process it to where it makes space for maybe that person to speak truth back into you or encouragement or hope, so that instead of being filled with the anger and the anxiety and the sadness, you can actually be filled with this hope and this joy. So that when you get bumped in life and things happen unexpectedly that you weren't prepared for, instead of lashing out in anger or maybe crying uncontrollably or whatever the emotion is, you can actually respond with a certain level of hope and joy and patience. And it can change the game of your interactions with people. Here at transit, at school, at home, on your sports teams. But we have to be so careful to pause and reflect on where we're at. So that's my challenge to y'all. You're going to go throughout this next week. Yeah, you have fall break, but when you get back at school, I want you to start talking to people about it. I want you to start writing about it. And therefore bringing people into your circle, into your corner that can help you so that you know you're never walking through life alone. So I'm going to pray for us. We're going to wrap up, and then I need you to stay seated right here because I have one more announcement to make. God, I thank you so much for this day. I thank you for these transit students that are here this morning. I thank you that you are such a good God, that you love us so much, that you want us to take care of ourselves, that you want us to guard our hearts because you know that we are going to be the best versions of ourselves when we do. So I ask that no matter what these students are walking through right now, that you would bring people into their life that they can talk about it with, that you would give them an outlet for these emotions that just so naturally come, and that as a result, they would be able to experience your love and your joy and your peace. Thank you so much for who you are to us. In your name I pray. Amen.